All right. So here at ABC, we believe that wedding planners and industry professionals deserve a community, education, and opportunities to help them build lasting careers. On this podcast, we'll talk with an industry expert, share some real experiences from the field, and explore the ideas shaping the future of weddings. So, whether you're a wedding planner, designer, venue, or other creative entrepreneur, you're in the right place. Today, our topic is mental health, culture, and emotionally intelligent weddings. So, I am here with Anansia Leslie-Bailey, and I am going to let her tell us a little bit about herself. So, can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you came to bridge mental health and the wedding industry through I Do Therapy?
Yes, thank you so much, Veronica, for having me on this.
Mhm.
So, how I started, it was essentially myself planning my own wedding. And I was not aware of mental health at the time. I started planning my wedding. I actually got married first, but then I planned it after. Um, Long story for that. But
That's all right. Just flip the
yeah,
script a little bit there.
a little bit. But yeah, when I started planning, I was so anxious and I did not know what to expect. And there was just so many decisions that I had to make at the time. And I wasn't sure how to best support myself. And I recognized, like when I was going through my master's program in mental health, that I didn't really have anybody that I could go to as a therapist to talk about this. And I wasn't sure if my wedding planner at the time was, recognizing those signs. She was fantastic regardless. But I think when I look back, I was like, man, like I wish that, she could have recognized like I was going through some anxiety and maybe I could have utilized some supports to help me through it. So that's how the idea really sparked. And I said, you know what, if no one is out there right now doing it, I'm going to do it. So I just gathered the idea, made an action plan, came up with the name before AI, which I'm very proud of myself. And I came up with ID Therapy. And that's how it all started.
Awesome. Awesome. I think sometimes we don't listen to ourselves. So I think, you definitely paid attention
Yeah.
and you've created something fantastic. I'm really excited. So tell me though, what made you realize that weddings, other than, doing your own, were a space where mental health conversations were actually needed?
I recognized it when I started to do a little bit of my own research and looking at websites for wedding planners and photographers and anyone in the wedding industry. And I noticed that there was a limited language centered around mental health. And, when we talk about luxury, it was always just around aesthetics and it was just trying to have this whole social media wedding. And I said to myself, that's so much pressure. Like I want to really connect with, somebody within the industry. And if I feel this way, then I'm sure other people might feel that way. And then I noticed other language too around burnout and, seeing what wedding pros are going through. And I said, there is an area here that we really got to start having more conversations around. So that is how it really started. And I also noticed that other industries were taking part in a conversation around mental health. Specifically, there is a training around mental health for hairstylists. And, I saw that taking off and I said, you know what, if the hair industry can do this, the wedding industry can also be a part of that change. So this is where I just started to develop some workshops and, really continue on with some of my interests in research. I do plan on doing some research around this area in the wedding industry. So that is how I really started to take off in it.
Awesome. So then another follow-up question, because I have a ton.
Yeah.
For the wedding professionals that are listening today, why is emotional intelligence such an important skill for them to have?
Yes, it is so important because one, if you know how to be trauma informed, that's going to likely decrease your rate of burnout. If you're unequipped and you get into a situation where there's high escalation and even family conflict, and you're not sure how to de-escalate that, then you're going to have a very difficult time navigating that entire process. And there's probably going to be tension throughout the entire time until the wedding day. So, in order for you to really highlight the emotional support, get that training, knowing how to show up with language, how you show up with your body, and even how you show up as a business owner. Because if you can support emotionally, the couple is going to feel that wedding is unforgettable. They're going to remember how you let them feel. They're going to more than likely leave reviews for you at the end of the day, and positive ones at that.
Yeah, and that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just getting reviews, because that's
Yeah.
pretty important and a lot of people don't leave them, but just understanding, even if it's just if you focus on your couples, but understanding the people around you, how
Yeah.
they operate, whether it's, a family member, a friend, client. It is important because everybody has a different way of listening and
Mhm.
understanding. So that I think that's wonderful. Now, from your perspective as a psychotherapist, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Why do you feel like weddings bring out such intense emotions for couples and families?
It brings out a lot of emotion because you're switching your identity. You're going into a whole other family unit. You're going to make a commitment, a lifelong commitment, essentially. So it's going to bring up so much intense emotions. And these, areas, when you're stepping into the wedding planning process, it elevates and escalates things 1,000 times more because you're coming into this season with past experiences. So if you struggled with making decisions before, just know that wedding planning, you're going to have to make them quickly. You're going to have to decide, and you're going to highlight the finances, and that's going to add a lot more stress. So I'm seeing that when couples show up and they have a lot of questions and they're trying to figure out each other. It was all happy in the very beginning. Yes, we are engaged, but then the reality hit. And then now the stress is the thing that takes over. So when they're coming in, we're talking about how the partner shows up. We're talking about family dynamics, especially conflicts with, parents, conflicts around finances. And if I'm seeing this, then I'm sure the wedding pros are front row and center regarding that. And I'm not just talking about wedding planners or coordinators. I'm talking about, even with photographers, if somebody's showing up and they're having body issues, they're going to be reflecting that in the camera, and you're going to have to figure out a way to be trauma informed and how to support them through that process. So, and it could show up even with the cake, deciding on a cake and what you want. If your mother has always been telling you what to do, you may not decide on things for yourself because you're trying to people please. So all of those are patterns in which I see show up in the room, in my space. And I think that it's so important for couples to really embark in therapy before they make a lifelong commitment too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know, wedding professionals, because I have done it at one point in time too, sometimes label couples as difficult or
Mm.
high maintenance, and
Or
you see all those. Yes, yes. What do you feel may be going on beneath the surface, emotionally for that couple?
Absolutely. As I said, all the things that the couple is experiencing, this is not the first time. It's shown up in past experiences, and it's now coming into your space. So, as I mentioned, with, let's say, for people pleasing, if that person has always decided to do everything else someone else says. And then now they're coming into the space where they really want control and they don't know how to, do that in a healthy way. We as wedding pros might see that person as being difficult because now they're trying to show their autonomy and assert themselves. But we're like, okay, what's going on? We don't have that background information, right? So this is why it's important for us to take off our own lens a little bit and put yourself in that person's world to really see where they may be coming from. Asking those questions and saying, hey, I'm noticing that, you're wanting this instead of this. How can I best support you in this moment? What is it that you feel that you're needing, right? You don't have to solve a whole entire problem and issue, but you just have to meet them where they're at.
Right. I think that's wonderful advice, not just for couples, but just, anybody, anywhere.
Yeah.
I know one thing you had talked about a while back, like intersecting identities, like the mom and, being in charge and doing things. Can you explain a little bit more about what that means in the context of wedding planning? And I only ask that because I've experienced, that through my couples. And at that point in time, I would always say, well, what is it exactly that you want?
Yeah.
But they would have no clue.
Right. So there's several ways that you can pull out the layers of the intersections. So if I'm looking at it specifically for the wedding planner themselves, right? How you show up at work is definitely a reflection of your own past experiences. So let's say you're the person that is a perfectionist and you want to make sure that everything is on point. That is coming from somewhere in your past where, for instance, you may have not received validation because anytime you do something, your parents have always put you down or told you that you need to do better. And then now you have shown up and taken those words, and then that has become your identity. So because you want to be a perfectionist now, that is also going to be reflective of how you show up with your couples. So if the couple is not meeting you where you are and you want them to do everything by the book, that might cause a little bit of tension, right? So this is how your identities can really intersect, right? Now, the other part of that for the couples, which I kind of explained a little bit with the mom example, but let's say the person has always avoided their emotions. They didn't really have a childhood where they felt comfortable enough to express themselves. And then now they don't do that with you because they're afraid that you might end up being disrespectful to them or whatever the case is. They are just not going to show you they're not going to meet you anywhere or halfway. Then there might be a little bit of tension and friction. There's other intersectionalities in terms of your identity and who you are regarding your race, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation. All of that in terms of your system matters and shows up in this room. So a couple who is of a different race may have a different experience regarding finances, right? They may be a little bit more protective of how they spend. And if the wedding planner is not sure on why they're that way, it's important to be trauma informed and maybe see, what, there might have been something in the past where they may not have opportunities coming their way, or they may have to be a little bit reserved in their spending because they didn't have that in their childhood. Let me try to understand and meet them where they're at. It's not because they just don't want to spend, because there's something there. So this is how we need to look at those intersections and figure out how to best support our couples.
No, that makes perfect sense. So I know, you mentioned some race things and different, cultures. What are some challenges that you've seen in like multicultural couples when navigating family expectations? Because I know sometimes when you bring two different cultures together, sometimes it's like a firecracker.
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, we could talk about interracial couples, right? Just culturally, the dynamic is different. And even when we talk, let's say, for instance, with Black couples, just because they're Black doesn't mean that they have all similarities, like they're the same. Someone can be from the Caribbean and somebody can be from, somewhere in the States. It's completely different in terms of culture, right? So we have to really be mindful of that when we're talking to our couples and understand what is it that they would like to see. How can we pull from each culture and embed it into one? What is it that your your traditions, what does that look like? And embracing those differences. The other part of this too is also marketing, right? There are times when I'm looking on websites and representation, it does matter. Couples want to see the representation out there because they may think, you know what, this person might be understanding and open-minded to supporting me, right? And not being judgmental with me. So having a few pictures of couples that are diverse, showing interracial couples, that's going to make a huge difference and send a message to, the people that you're working with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think too, in some cultures like the Indian culture,
Yeah.
the African culture,
Ah,
money, levels of respect,
yeah.
all play a really big part, in that whole situation. So I think, we always at ABC, we encourage our members to educate themselves
Mhm.
daily,
Mm.
because there are different types of Asian cultures, different,
Yes.
it's so many different things out there. And if you want to focus, on a niche, or maybe you don't, maybe, love is love and you want any and everybody to, come to you, but you still have to understand who those people are.
Mhm. Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some things that wedding professionals could do to be more mindful when balancing like a multicultural traditions and family values?
Yeah. What they can do, definitely do your research, right? Asking your couples initially, when they're coming in, what your culture is, right? That
Mhm.
is huge. And then it's not up to us to, keep on asking the couples all the time, like, okay, well, what is it that is in your culture and whatnot, right? That's important. But we also need to take that initiative to do our research and be culturally competent and figuring out how we can show up in the best way, right?
Yeah.
So there are tons of books out there, tons of research that you can use. Please be mindful of Chat GPT. Just because they spew out information doesn't mean that it's accurate. They may end up giving you references and the reference doesn't even exist. So really go a little bit old school and finding information out there. But that is really the way that you can do that.
That is right. It's there's so I'm with you on the Chat GPT thing. I use it, but you have to use it
Responsibly.
right and
Yeah.
still follow up, do some research,
Yeah.
with resources to make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. I'm into research and I do that quite often. So I'm telling people be careful because I've prompted it to give me some references and they don't even exist. So I make sure that you can go on Google Scholar and find some articles. There's just a ton access databases out there that can provide.
Um,
Yeah.
Awesome. Now I know, you had talked to about the what was the word, trauma informed approach.
Mhm.
How how best would like a wedding professional use that, and how would you explain that to like a new wedding professional?
Yeah. So essentially trauma informed is you're not just trying to become a therapist. You won't be doing that, right? But it's
Mhm.
learning how to support the people you are working with in a way that you can put yourself in that person's shoes, in a way that you can be open-minded and empathetic so that the person can feel comfortable. Okay? Now, when you are trauma informed, it's so important for you to recognize that this person is coming from a place where they may not have always had someone be open to them, where they feel comfortable with them. So you really have to shift that perspective and put yourself in that person's world. And I keep on mentioning that. Put yourself in that person's world where you can envision where they're coming from with their response. So if you're going to try to de-escalate something, don't just take it for face value. Like, this person is angry and I don't know why. And well, what is the reason behind this frustration, right? What can I do to better support that person? You can just ask them, what is it that you feel in this moment? What is it that you need from me? How can I support you? You don't have to go into the full details of how a therapist would, but
Right.
basic skills to have. It's how I put it. It's like first aid. You're not going to be a paramedic, but you have the skills that you can utilize in the world in case you see a crisis. You go out there, you're checking to make sure the environment is good. You go and you ask those questions, and then you intervene in an appropriate way. It's the same thing. So that is how I would frame trauma informed.
Okay, I love that. I know you gave us, an example, but can
Mhm.
you give me like some practices or some best practices
Yeah.
that planners or professionals can use to help couples feel safer and more supported?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing that can be utilized is having access to a resource list. So I haven't really seen this out there, but if you're a wedding planner, you can have a wellness resource list. And if you're noticing that a couple is, really struggling with their mental health, it doesn't mean that you have to just refer them to a therapist, but that'll be a great step. Having on hand like a therapist in your local region that you can refer to, but also having massage therapists available, and putting that down on your resource list. Somebody that does somatic work. You can have a list where there's a real estate agent, because sometimes couples are looking to purchase a house right away. You can have a list for a lawyer, where that person can figure out finances, or even a financial advisor. So when you have a full wellness list, that is showing the couple that you're mindful and you're taking the initiative to recognize when they may need extra support aside from you as the wedding planner. So that is one big step that you can take. The other thing that you can do is just labeling it and not being afraid to say something, right? And when we try to avoid, it doesn't remove the fact that it's happening. So if you're noticing that, someone is having a panic attack and you're the person that can support them, utilize those skills. Like when you're getting trained in trauma informed practice, utilize those skills and conversing with that person, recognizing those signs, asking them to breathe in and breathe out, right? Getting them down, and then, talking to them about coping strategies. Having a list of coping strategies for your couples is beautiful. That is going to elevate the experience, because now you're really focusing on the emotion. So once you are able to know how to support in regards to those areas, that's going to make them feel so much more comfortable with you and trust in you to know that you're going to get them through this process.
Wonderful. Now, are there maybe signs that as a wedding planner or wedding professional that we should look for?
Absolutely. And it's dependent on what that person is experiencing, because it could be depression, where they can be a lot more isolating. They don't want to show up for appointments. Um, yeah, so it could be things like that, where you don't have to necessarily be so invasive, but just to say, hey, like, I'm here when you're ready. If you feel like you need extra support outside of me, I'm noticing that you haven't been showing up, but here are some resources that can support you. So instead of you just saying, here's therapy, when you have
Yeah.
a resource list with everybody, it doesn't look like you're telling them, go to therapy,
Go
right?
to therapy. Right. You
When
need
you
to
have a
know.
massage therapy, it lightens the load a little bit. So, like, hey, I want you to take care of yourself. Like, self-care is important. Here is a resource list that can help you with some self-care. And you give that to them, right? That is you
That's
doing
wonderful.
diligence.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many things that we can utilize to support. But that's just with depression, with anxiety. Sometimes it's because there's so many decisions that are being made all at once. When you're coming to them, just give them like one or two options, maybe three, and saying, hey, like, what do you think about this? Take your time. You don't have to make a decision right now. Giving them space to just breathe through it. Okay. The other signs would be even intimate partner violence, right? If you're noticing your partner is the one that's always speaking up and not saying anything, they're not saying anything, or you're noticing like body language where they're a little bit more like hesitant or shifty, and those are things that you might want to recognize and pull out into signs. And then once again, your resource list. You're not telling them that, hey, I'm noticing that you're going through intimate partner violence, but hey, I'm noticing that, you were a little bit reserved today, but here is a list that can support you in case you need extra help for wellness. You give that to them, right? That is going to be beneficial. So I encourage wedding pros, having a local resource list for wellness is going to be so helpful.
I love that idea. Love that. So if somebody, I'm trying to think how to kind of phrase it, but okay, if wedding professionals took one mindset shift, like just one thing, from all of the work that you do, what do you think that would be?
One mindset shift would be,
Because I know for a lot of us, we have so used to doing things the same way for everyone that if we changed that and added one thing or removed one thing, what would that be?
it really is to just being open-minded to others' experiences and knowing that it's coming from somewhere. And it may not just be because of you, but it's, something happened in the past, right? So once we have that lens, really just put yourself in that person's world. That would be the best thing to do. Always ensure that you say, I'm going to put myself in that person's world to understand them better, right? Just being curious is going to be the world of a difference in how this wedding planning goes. Just be curious.
Love that. Open minds. That's more important than everything else, especially, with all this stuff going on today. Open
Yes.
mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, I know you do consultations and things like that. So can you tell our listeners about consultations and the trainings that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of consultations, I can come and support any wedding pro. If you want me to take a look at your website or take a look in ways that you can build a better system that is a little bit more trauma informed and empathetic for people that's wanting to access your service, I am providing those services. And then I also offer workshops and even training. So I do have, sometimes I do like a quarterly, like a free webinar where I talk about the mental health signs. That one is actually coming up the end of March, so March 31st, where anybody can register for that. But I also can do individualized like team trainings, where if you want some supports around burnout, interpersonal work, like how you as a wedding pro show up in the way that you navigate your couples, I provide that training. That's one of my favorites. But yeah, like there's just so many things in regards to just mental health in the wedding industry that I just try to unravel and get everybody to that next level to elevate the experience. So yeah, if anybody's interested, please reach out at info@ido-therapy.com.
Awesome. And I will make sure that I put that link in the bottom of in the description so they can visit your website and sign up. So I think that would be a wonderful resource for anyone. I do have one final question for you.
Yeah.
What is one thing wedding professionals often misunderstand about couples during that planning process?
One thing they misunderstand,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they take it personal.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. Do not take it personal. Please, I beg of you. Okay. Anytime that somebody might be giving you a hard time, it usually is not because of you. It might be, and that's your prerogative. You can't say that, but
Yeah.
but sometimes it's not because of you, right? So really trying your best to not take it personal, as I did mention, go into that person's world to understand where they might be coming from. What is behind this reaction? Because I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, it's because of some past experience and they're showing up with it today.
That's great. I tell you what, I appreciate you taking some time with me today. I know we went a little bit over, but that's all right. It was great. And for everyone listening, I hope that this episode reminds you that you're not behind, you're not alone,
Wow.
but you're exactly where you need to be.
I love
So
that.
thank you. If
Mhm.
anything in this podcast today resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone. Share the I Do Therapy link, and always stay connected, stay grounded, and keep building with purpose. So until next time, take care and keep the faith.